Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you all being here. This is basically an informal Ask Me Anything session specific to business owners. I am open to talking about really anything relating to finance, business, intersection of the two. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know everything. If I can't answer your question, I will research it or leverage someone in my network and find an answer and get back to you. So this session is meant to be educational in nature. It's not investment advice. But if you do want specific advice regarding your situation, I'll give you an email at the end and feel free to reach out, throw some time on the calendar. So we'll dive right in. I'm going to do basically a short, quick presentation that typically answers a lot of the high level questions that people have and is something basically that I talk to just about every business owner about. So, I'll dive right into basically 4 key steps that we look at for business owners and we get everyone set up with. So number 1 is basically building a cash flow system. So pretty straightforward. It's crucial to be saving regularly. You want to designate basically all your accounts will have a specific purpose. This is basically built off of a book called Profit First, and something that I try to get every new client who's a business owner to buy and to read and to keep. I've got my copy right here, and you can see all kinds of sticky notes sticking out of it. It's something I reference all the time. It's really helpful. It's just a really straightforward cash flow system. Basically, the purpose is you want to know that for every element of your business, whether it's marketing, taxes, operations, an account for profit, you want to make sure that every account has a job and you're able to quickly and easily figure out what you have and where. So that's step 1. Step 2 is automate your accounts. So basically, like I said before, you want to have jobs for every account and then you want to automate them. So typically everyone does this a little bit differently. In the book, there's basically 2 dates of the months, like the 1st and the 15th, that he goes in and reconciles his accounts. A lot of people prefer to just do it bi-weekly. There's no wrong answer here, but you want to have a set basically time on the calendar that you go in and reconcile your books. So an easy example of automation is, hey, I know I'm in an 18% effective tax bracket. Bi-weekly, any income that you had, go in, take 18% of it and put it in your tax account. By the time the end of the quarter comes around, you'll have the money for the tax bill. It's there. You don't have to scramble and pull it from other accounts. Same goes for something like fixed expenses. If you're leasing space, if you have an electricity or water bill, all your fixed expenses typically are pretty easy to automate into one account. And then investments too. So I get this question a lot on the automation, okay, Josh, that makes sense. I can put X amount into taxes, X amount into fixed expenses, but what about the investment accounts? Same thing. You want to have accounts dedicated for investments. Some will be retirement investments. Some will be shorter term investments that you need before retirement. So we work with clients to figure out, hey, what are the best accounts? How many do you need? What do we name them in a way that makes sense? And a lot of times we'll put that into a diagram just so it's visual and they can see, okay, when the money comes in, here's how it gets distributed. And I'll talk a little bit more about the investment side of it a little bit later. And then step 3, get crystal clear on your goals. This is something a lot of people want to skip. But these systems that we talked about before, they're really meaningless if you don't know where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do. So we really encourage people to dream big, dig deep, do some soul searching on what's most important. We have a whole system through Money Quotient that we use to help people really figure out, okay, what is the most important things? And just as important, what isn't meaningful to you? What are things that you can cut out that, maybe, aren't the best use of your time and aren't really bringing you fulfillment and happiness? And then, of course, number 4, you knew it was coming. Regularly review these systems, whether that's with your financial advisor, financial planner, life planner, CPA, right? If you have a trusted advisor, a third party you can go to review these, it's good to get some perspective on that. Keep it simple, right? If you've talked to a financial advisor before, likely you've seen, how complex they can try to make things. It doesn't need to be complex. Keep it simple, automate the accounts, give them all names, don't overcomplicate it. Build a cash flow system. So basically here, just like we talked about before, this is more of just a visual example basically, but what you want to do first is have an income account. So any money that's going to come into your business, if you've got two or three different revenue streams, change your accounts where everything comes into this income account. And then let's just say it's the first of the month. Maybe that's one of the days that you figured out is good for you to go in and reconcile things. So you go in, it's the first of the month, you've got your money in your income account. Now it's time to distribute it, right? It doesn't have to be in this order. I just like this visual, and a lot of people do it in a specific order, especially if their income is really variable and, you have a really big month, really small month, etc. We talked about operating expenses. This could be one account. Maybe for you, it's three different accounts. It really depends on your business. I've seen it done a lot of ways. No right or wrong answers here. The idea is you want to have a percentage or a dollar amount that flows into this account to pay the expenses. Same with taxes. We touched upon that. It's smart to have an account for employee pay. Even if you don't have employees, set up an account for yourself so you make sure you get paid. And then this one sometimes throws people for a loop. When we're going through the cash flow system, up to this point, everyone's like, oh yeah, that makes a ton of sense. A profit account sometimes makes people scratch their head and say, well, what if I'm not profitable? But this is the point of this type of system is you set a percentage. Typically we start people off at like 5%, but this way you make sure, hey, I am profitable. I am setting aside money. Typically at the end of the quarter, you'll sweep that somewhere else. For some people, maybe it was a really bad quarter. Maybe you got to sweep that back into operating expenses. But ideally what you're doing, kind of the default for us is we'll say, okay, let's split that half and half at the end of the quarter. We'll take some of the profit and half of it, we'll put it right in the pay bucket. We'll pay ourselves, we'll pay employees, whether that's bonuses, and then the other half can go back into operating expenses or something we'll touch upon a little bit later is, maybe a special bucket, that you built for marketing or a special project that you're working on or whatever it is. That's the beauty of this. You decide. So that's just a simple, overview of how that works. Here's the automation. Really the point of this whole system is to make your life easy. So just like it says here, anything that can be automated should be. That includes the investments. The idea is the less you have to think about it, the less you have to do, the more this is going to work for you and the less can fall through the cracks. So just like I mentioned before, with the investments, I wanted to build upon that a little bit. I could talk about this all day long, but just a couple key bullet points. You want to use low cost index funds. If there's an expense ratio over 0.2%, that's going to be something that you want to question. So if you have an advisor and they say, hey, I found this great fund, it's got a 1% expense ratio, maybe get a second opinion or just ask them, well, why? Is it a very specific account that's trying to do a very specific thing? Typically, you don't need funds like this. And advisors, especially at big companies, they make commissions off these funds. They're always going to be recommending these funds. But I would be cautious, if it's over 0.2%, maybe get a second opinion. Just as important, you want to make sure you have exposure to all areas of the market. I won't belabor this, but US stocks, international stocks, and even within those buckets, you're going to have small, medium, large companies, right? You want to have some bond exposure in your portfolio. There's a lot that goes into it, but again, just keep it really, really simple. If you're just starting out, there are funds called total market indexes. That means you're buying small, medium, and large US companies. So if you find a total market index fund, that's an easy way to get exposure to all US companies, and then go find an international index for some international exposure. If you're going to go this strategy, do maybe 70% into the total market index or the US stocks, 30% into the international stocks. Just keep it really, really simple. You can get as complicated as you want with investments. We have clients who do. But if you're just starting out, keep it really, really simple. And so this one is, I'll say definitely person to person is going to be quite a bit different. Get crystal clear on your goals is, sounds nice in theory, but hey, how do you do that? So I wanted to touch upon this. I have an example of a form here that we use, and there's actually 3 or 4 forms after this one that we use to drill down even further, basically into, what is the most important. Let's visualize your future. Fast forward 5 years, 10 years. Maybe even, hey, you're, on your deathbed. What did you regret not doing? What is this ideal life that you want to live? I can't stress enough. This is the most important step. A lot of people want to skip it. Don't skip this step. I saw this time and time again working at a giant firm that kind of, worked off commissions and prioritized, just strictly investments and maximize. Well, there's a lot of people who did that and went that route, and they wake up one day at 65 and they said, well, what the heck was all this for? There's so much I wanted to do and didn't do. Um, don't let that be you. So get as clear as you can. I would say, it's hard. It's hard without someone else in the picture, someone trained as a coach or a life planner, even a therapist. Any sort of third party perspective that you can get here is going to be valuable. Talk it out, spouse, family, friends, talk it out with everyone. And, even pose the question, what am I missing here? What do you think? Ask yourself that question. If I was on my deathbed, what would I regret not doing? If money were no object, what would I change in my life? Like these sort of big picture questions that make you think, and just drill down, keep revisiting it, write it down, take a break, come back to it a few days later, get as clear as you can. Because once you know where you want to go, the rest is easy. It's going to fall into place. Once you know exactly where you want to go, building your systems is going to be so much more straightforward. That extra fun account, the vacation account, the thing that you want to budget for is going to be obvious. So that's it, really, for my spiel there. But I wanted to touch upon that high level. I think it's super important for all business owners to be thinking about those 3 things. This is what you came for now. So this is sort of the Q&A portion, the Ask Me Anything. I have Ray with me here. So if DM all your questions to Ray directly in the chat, and she's going to sort of MC them to me, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Hey, everybody. I've already got a couple of questions. First question, I've got cash sitting in the bank. What do I do with it?
Yeah, that's a good one. We hear that one a lot. I would say the first thing to remember is it's good to have some cash on hand. You want to have some cash on hand. I would hope any financial advisor that you talk to is going to recommend a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. I would say first step is going to be use something like Mint, or you need a budget to track your spending. That way you'll know roughly how much you spend every month, and you can back into your emergency savings goal that way. So hey, I started tracking on Mint. I spend $4,000 a month. Perfect. Okay, so I need, anywhere between 12 and 24,000 set aside in cash as an emergency savings goal. And that's going to depend. It's going to depend on, your situation, of course. And you'll probably hear me say that for every single question that's asked, right? It's the favorite answer for financial advisors. It depends, because it does. If you're dual income and you have no kids and your house is paid off, maybe 3 months is totally fine for you. You don't have a ton of risk. But if you have a family and one parent is a stay-at-home parent, it's probably better for you to have 6 months, maybe even a year. It really depends. So we really talk with people about, well, hey, let's talk about that worst case scenario, and what would you feel comfortable having? And at first, it seems a little shocking. You hear, wow, 24,000 in cash. Like, man, I've heard like I should be investing that money, but if you were to lose your job, you'd be really thankful that you had that there. And once you have the emergency fund set aside, then you can start looking at investing the excess, right? And you'll feel really good having that cash there. It'll protect your investments. You won't be taking out of retirement accounts. Just like we touched upon before, when you're ready to take that step past the emergency fund, you can set up what's called a brokerage account. It's just a simple investment account, not specific to retirement. And put your money in a total market index fund, like we talked about before. Make sure it's got the low expense ratio, and you'll have basically exposure to the entire market.
Awesome. So if I have cash sitting in the bank, that should be in a savings account, right? And what's the best kind of savings account?
Well, I'll say that depends again too. So I would say look at, especially right now with the way interest rates are, a lot of people, are letting their money sit in these big, big banks, and you're still getting next to nothing, right? And so a lot of times on the news, you hear about the downside, right, of all the interest rates growing up. Oh, I can't buy a house, I can't afford a mortgage, but those interest rates trickle down on the lending side as well. So if you think about like a high yield savings account, something like that is going to pay you a heck of a lot more than just your regular checking or even savings, at your Wells Fargo, Bank of America, so look for something that's a high yield savings account. Don't be afraid to shop around. There's a lot of, especially like digital banks now, online banks that offer great rates. And even some of those bigger banks, if you're sitting here saying, well, no, I really like my Bank of America account, ask them about a money market account. You'll get a lot better of an interest rate there as well, and still have it be secure. Because that's a good point. You want that cash to be working for you. You just don't want a pile of cash sitting there earning 0.01. And, if you're not proactive about it, the bank is happy to pay you 0.01 and let that cash sit there.
So, how much should I be paying for someone to manage my investments?
Well, um, it depends. I'll say it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, what type of investments you have. There are people out there who are trying to do very, very specific things. They want to have very specific private equity type funds. The way we do it is we basically bundle our investment management into our flat fee. That way, there's not, an additional cost. We don't like that setup. I've worked that way in the past. Hey, we're going to charge you this, and we're going to charge you this, and we're going to nickel and dime you, and it's going to be a percentage. We don't do it that way. Basically, what you see is what you get. You play the flat fee, and if you want us to manage all the accounts, great. If you want to manage one, that's great too. Typically, what you'll see, if you just go to XYZ financial advisor at a big company, you're going to see a percentage fee. It's usually around 1%. The reason we didn't go with a model like that, I just have a personal bias. I think it unfairly punishes investors when the market goes up. If you have, let's say, $100,000 invested and you're paying 1%, it's $1,000 a year. And let's say the account grows through the market, that 1% now becomes an even higher fee. Well, the advisor didn't make the market go up, right? And so, you shouldn't be punished for the fact that the market went up. Now you have to pay more. I don't see things that way. I don't think this should be done that way. That's typical though. That is what you're usually going to see. Basically you pay more and the advisor pays more, gets paid more. But again, they didn't make the market go up. And then the other side of that coin is it sort of creates this environment where the advisor is incentivized to collect, right? They want to collect as much of your money as they can, have it sit in the investment accounts, the stock accounts, basically because the more of your money they have, the more money that they'll make. I'm glad we don't do things that way. We work with a lot of people who are real estate investors. They need that cash. They're buying houses, they're selling houses, they've got rental income. It fluctuates. I just think it's a lot cleaner, to have that flat fee. Everyone knows, what the fee is going to be. If you find a side hustle you want to invest in or a rental property you want to buy, I can say, hey, great, let's do that. I can advise on it. The fee stays the same. It puts me in a place where I don't have this, conflict of interest, and I can help you with what you're trying to do. And then there's, I guess the last thing I'll touch upon here is that's sort of the advisor fee. There's layers of fees is something to think about. So if you are paying an advisor 1%, they're investing in funds. Like we talked about earlier, you want to look for funds that have expense ratios under 0.2. So something we see a lot is people are paying their advisor 1% and their advisor has them in 20 different funds that are sort of an average of about 1% expense ratio. So now you're paying 2% when really you should be paying zero point 0.2. So don't let that happen to you.
All right, next one, switching gears a little bit. So taxes can feel like they're out of control. How do I minimize that legally? How do I minimize my taxes?
Yeah. How much time do you have? If you are a business owner, right, which most of the people, if not everybody in here probably is, I would say that typically the lowest hanging fruit is believe it or not going to be to track all your expenses. It's like the number one thing we see all the time. It's not a difficult thing, it's just something that gets overlooked. It's like, man, I don't have time for bookkeeping, but the amount of money that it saves you. I mean, we've seen people go from owing $20,000 on their taxes to getting $15,000 back. It's substantial. And so, what you want to do, first and foremost, is you have your business accounts. You plug them into, QuickBooks is typically the one that a lot of people use. You just link your any business cards or accounts into QuickBooks. Pick a day each week to reconcile the transactions. I mean, really, I've seen a lot of people bundle. Maybe you just do it bi-weekly with your automation of accounts where everything is distributed. Um, it would be irresponsible of me not to say, get a CPA and or bookkeeper, tax professional. It's good to have a professional here. The tax code is always changing. Um, a lot of people try to cut corners on this and say, well, no, I'll use TurboTax and do it myself. Again, you're almost certainly leaving something on the table. The tax code's always changing. There's a lot of creative ways that CPAs can save you money. Um, and so I would say, let me think here if there's anything else I'm missing. It could be, I'll just give some examples. It could be depreciation on real estate that you own. Maybe a CPA looks at your return and says, well, hey, file as an S corp, change the structure of your business. That's gonna save you a lot of money on taxes. Maybe it's October, November, and your CPA says, hey, let's review everything. Maybe you've got some expenses that you are waiting until next year, but actually it would help you to do them in November, December, and sort of bunch a bunch of expenses together to offset some income. Maybe you had a big income year and you want to offset that. I could go on forever listing examples, but really the moral of the story is get a good CPA, especially if they specialize in whatever it is that you do in your business.
How would you advise going about getting or finding a good CPA?
It's hard. Defining any professional is hard. I would say education and credentials are important. It's not it's not universal, right? Maybe you'll find someone who's not credentialed or went to school 30 years ago who is excellent. But don't just be fooled by experience. I'll say that I've had a lot of people and they say, well, my CPA has been doing this for 35 years. Great, but like I was talking about before, tax code's always changing. Have they done any continuing education in that time? Are they part of professional organizations? I see it in my own industry all the time. Hey, I went to college, to learn about finance. Well, great. That was, 20 years ago. What have you done since then? How are you keeping up on things? Are you part of professional organizations where you can talk with colleagues about new strategies, new things they're trying? And so that's one part of it. And the other part is interview them with someone who is at least somewhat familiar. I've done this with clients before. Maybe they live in a state where I don't have someone that I can recommend. I'm happy to kind of shop around and say, okay, well, let's narrow it down to 3 people that we feel really good about, and let's have 30-minute phone calls and interview them. I help clients kind of brainstorm questions based on their scenario. Okay, well, I'm a real estate investor. I invest in multi-families. Okay, well, great. Well, when we interview a CPA, we can ask them, hey, how many of your clients are multifamily investors? What are some of the biggest deductions you get for these people? And it's almost immediately, obvious, hey, this person's a great fit. wow, look at all the great things they're doing for other multifamily investors, or oh no, deer in headlights, maybe not the right person.
That's super helpful. I have an LLC. Do I really need a business bank account?
Oof, yes, definitely. If you have an LLC and no business bank account, I don't want to say, I mean, you've skipped a step. You've opened yourself up to potential liability. So, I'm assuming in this case, you're probably paying from your personal accounts. So let's say something happens in your business, someone sues you. Well, there's no business accounts to go after. There's really no business to go after. They're now going to be coming after your personal assets. And you're probably missing out on some tax benefits too. So, I mean, I'll kind of back up to, maybe like two or three questions ago. I mean, you have an LLC. That's great. That's a great start. I would say go get yourself, build that cash flow system we talked about in the beginning. Set yourself up with some business accounts and a business credit card. It's gonna be important for so many reasons. You're gonna be able to track expenses easier. You're gonna have separation of state, right? You're gonna have your personal finances. You're gonna have your business finances. From a liability standpoint, it's gonna be much, much cleaner. You don't want your retirement accounts at jeopardy if someone were to sue your business. All the time we hear people say, well, I'll never be sued. What's the likelihood of that? I could tell you the craziest stories of, times people have got sued. A tree on your property fell over onto the neighboring building, right? Someone slipped on your steps. It doesn't take much. Um, so yeah, I would say right back to the beginning of the presentation, build that cash flow system, open up those bank accounts for your business. It's not hard. I personally love an online bank called Relay. They make it super easy to build this sort of cash flow system and automate everything.
If I don't have an LLC, if I'm a sole proprietor, how is that different? And how would you advise going forward between being a sole proprietor to an LLC?
It's just a legal structure. And so it's just sort of an extra layer, if you will. You're going to be recognized. You'll get an EIN where you'll file a business tax return. I have a downloadable on my website of basically how to create an LLC from scratch. And there's some language in there too, depending on the business. Sometimes people want to be anonymous. Sometimes people set up their business in another state for different reasons, and you'll need a registered agent. And so I have that on that downloadable too. But I mean, really, to answer your question, it you know it's going to help you from a tax standpoint to have your actual business set up. Right now, as a sole proprietor, it's all funneling in as probably 1099 income. It's all filed with your tax return. There's going to be additional things that you can take advantage of, and it's going to be a lot cleaner for you to have that separation of me and my business.
I've never invested before. I have a good amount of cash saved up. So, what do I do first and how do I start? It's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah. Okay. So I touched upon this earlier, but after you have the emergency fund, the question really becomes, okay, well, what are you investing for? And like, I think one important thing just to say here is if whatever you're investing for or saving up for is within a 1 year time frame, right? You say, well, I want to buy a house. And we've heard this all the time. I want to buy a house in 4 months. How do I invest this money? Very, very carefully. If you have a time frame of less than a year, like conventional wisdom is going to say you probably don't want to invest it unless it's going to be really, really safe type investments. And those are out there too. We work with people, where we say, okay, let's build like a bond portfolio, maybe a little bit of stocks, but really kind of the good rule of thumb to keep in mind is the longer until you need the money, the less that volatility or the ups and downs should really concern you. So an easy example, you're 30 years old and you say, okay, I want to invest for retirement. You could you could be as aggressive as you want, as you feel comfortable with anyway. So I'll run with that example. Let's say you say, okay, I want to save for retirement. That's important to me. I haven't done that, and I really want to start setting aside money for my future. That could be set up a 401k for your business. If you're a sole proprietor, they make what are called solo 401ks. Super simple to set up. Tax law has changed recently when they've made it even easier, and there's actually tax credits for doing that right now. Could be as simple as an IRA. A lot of people have heard of IRAs. Those are retirement specific accounts. Probably sound like a broken record, but you could still use that same total market index fund, for in a retirement account. You can use those in brokerage accounts, retirement accounts. They're universal. For something shorter term, and when I say shorter term, anything sooner than retirement, where you're going to need it before the age of 59 and a half is what the IRS says. I would set up a brokerage account. That doesn't restrict you from getting the money like a retirement account would. So for those of you who don't know, there's penalties. You put money in an IRA and you're 40 years old and you want to use it to buy something, they're gonna hit you with a 10% penalty most of the time. Main thing to remember, I think I touched upon this in the presentation, but you want to make sure it's diversified. So total market index is great because you're basically buying thousands of companies with that one fund, which makes it really easy on you. You just buy that one fund, right? You don't have to sit there and actually trade thousands of stocks. And really, like, so I'll mention this too. Something that I see a lot is people. I think of it as like gambling. And I know not everyone thinks of it this way, but clients will come to us with statements and they have one stock, two stocks. It truly is gambling. Oh, I bought XYZ company because I thought it would go up. It's a lot more risky, believe it or not. The market as a whole is a lot more reliable. If you're buying something like a total market index or the S&P 500, you're owning hundreds, if not thousands of companies. But if you say, well, hey, I've seen Microsoft going up, I'm just going to buy Microsoft stock, just saying that as an example, sometimes it will beat the market in that index. Sometimes it won't, but it doesn't take much for one company's stock to be impacted, right? We've all seen that, on the news, the CEO did this and, they're being ousted and the stock takes a huge hit. You don't want to open yourself up to that kind of risk. It's much simpler, easier, and less risky to just, to buy the aggregate.
What are your thoughts on those one-off investing apps and things that are really popular right now, like Robinhood and Acorns? Is that much more risky?
It is. From the Robinhood standpoint, yes, because they're in a lot of trouble. Robinhood's in a lot of trouble for everything that happened with GameStop. You want to be careful when it comes to individual stocks. And I don't have Robinhood. I don't have any experience playing around on their platform, but I've heard some stories, and it feels like the opposite of Keep It Simple at Robinhood. Like, I feel like a lot of people using that platform are really feeding into this sort of like gambling mentality. A lot of them are following newsletters and discussion boards online, and hey, we'll all, buy this stock, but so many people get burned doing that. You got to sit in front of your computer. You got to sit in front of your computer and really like monitor the stocks as they're going up and down. Personally, it's a losing game. Like the data is out there, for anyone who really wants to nerd out on this, go check out it's called the SPIVA report, SPIVA. And basically in a nutshell, it just shows like over 90% of professional money managers, the people who are hired by the Schwabs and Fidelities and Vanguards of the world to build out these funds, like 90% of them underperform the index, just the plain old S&P 500. And these are the people who, have PhDs and do research all day, every day, and try to pick stocks and beat the market. Like 90% of them fail and don't do it. So, unless you know something that they don't know and you really think, you're in that 10%, I would just stick to the tried and true, index fund investing.
Someone says, that sounds so stressful. Yes, it does.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And I wanted to touch upon Acorn because Acorn is a little bit different where they round up your change, I think it is, and invest it. I like that concept. It's a little bit extra because you got to open one extra account. I mean, you could set this up yourself, but it really comes back to like that automation concept of like, hey, you're not going to go into your bank app and move 38 cents over, every time you make a purchase. So I like that concept. It's so small. I would say if you are already automating, hundreds of dollars, biweekly or whatever it may be, maybe you can skip this step, but I like the idea of it. I like that you can round up change and automate it. Maybe for someone young or brand new starting out, maybe it's an easy way to kind of dip your toe in the water.
What does a financial advisor do that I can't do myself?
There's so much that a financial advisor does, and depends on the advisor too, right? Like, I mean, if you're working with someone who's like a commission-based advisor at one of these big companies, there's probably not a lot of planning going on. Certainly not life planning. Um, and of course, it depends on you too. Hey, are you just trying to set up an easy automated system, where you invest in index funds? You probably learn how to do that. You want to dive a little bit deeper into planning, especially life planning. I think that's where a lot of the value comes with an advisor. I think the word I'll use here is perspective. Um, Perspective in the sense of, you know, does your doctor diagnose themselves? Are they their own doctor? Do lawyers represent themselves? No, right? So to have an experienced expert advisor in your corner who's seen thousands of cases similar to yours, they're a student of the ever changing rules and regulations, tax codes. Um, they can give you that extra perspective that maybe you haven't seen. Um, I mean, at this point, over a decade, right? I've met with over 11,000 people at this point. There's very few things that I haven't seen. And I feel like something that I can do that adds a lot of value is ask questions that sort of help shape your viewpoint, maybe help you see things in a way that you hadn't seen before, give you some expert advice around, well, hey, had you considered this, tax code? Had you considered this type of account? This might really be beneficial 10 years out down the road. I think that's one thing, and I'm guilty of it too, but everybody, right? When you meet with a financial planner, when you're thinking about your financial situation, you're so focused on the right now, the here and the now. My job as a planner is to zoom out and say, okay, that's awesome. Let's maximize what you're doing now. But big picture, at this point, I mean, if we're talking about investments and things, we have a very clear picture of where you'd like to go as well. And so my job is to help you zoom out and say, okay, well, great, we're doing everything we can do right now. What can we do to put you in a really good spot 10 years down the road? And it's really hard as an individual to think that way. And look at it from those angles maybe that you hadn't considered. I want to give an example. So I worked with someone who's he was referred to me by a colleague of his, and he wasn't very happy about meeting with me. He's very confident that he didn't need any sort of help. He had it all in order. Very, very smart guy. He was like, engineer, rocket scientist. He would always say, Josh, this is not rocket science. And I would know because I'm a rocket scientist, and I used to think that was the funniest thing, but he was, he's very standoffish. He didn't want to work with me. He didn't see the value. So long story short, he had over $1 million basically sitting in company stock and a company 401k plan. And he wanted to start a business with that money. He was very excited about it. He had done a ton of research on the tax implications. I mean, he had built spreadsheets and he had a presentation for me. He knew he qualified for something called the Rule of 55, which is one of those exemptions that actually got him around the 10% penalty. He had done a lot of the legwork. He made my job easy. What he didn't realize, something that didn't come up in the research, not surprisingly, was a concept called NUA, net unrealized appreciation. It's basically a technical term for stock in a 401k. If you're not a CFP or you haven't specialized in 401k planning, you most likely never heard of it. Anyway, long story short, we were able to save him a substantial amount in taxes. I mean, six figures in taxes alone, just from that one conversation. So I think of things like that with an advisor. Um, I love working with people who are like, man, I've done my research. I am a student of finance. Awesome. That's great. How, what other ways can I help? Can we look at the big picture? Can I help you get clearer on the goals? Are there accounts that we can utilize or tax laws? Maybe I can just introduce you to a professional in my network who can help in a different way. Those are the points that come to mind for me.
So I want to get a business loan. How do I do that? Where do I start?
Well, it starts with building business credit. So your business builds credit just like you build credit. So you figure, you turn 18 and you say, okay, I want to start building my credit, and you go get a credit card. Well, that's linked to your social security number. And, hopefully you make payments on time and you start building your credit. And, all the things that happen behind the scenes, your credit utilization, and you build your credit over time. Well, your business credit is no different. It's linked to your EIN number. You can get a business credit card to start. It's going to be in your business name, your LLC name. And same as personal credit, make sure to pay it off on time every month. Kind of stair step into it, get bigger loans. Maybe you get a small loan for some equipment for your business, or a vehicle, a business vehicle, which also helps from a tax standpoint. Over time, you will build that business credit. Really helps your business. And then when it's time to get that bigger loan, maybe you want to expand or make a big purchase, you'll have that credit established. And the last thing I'll say, I think, is building a relationship with someone locally can be really helpful. I'm sure most of the people here have had this experience. If you go work with a big lender and they sort of treat you like a number, if you can build a good relationship with like a local credit union or something like along those lines, it can be the difference between being able to get a loan and not being able to. So I think that's good to mention too.
In that same vein, someone says, I just started my business and I'm worried about protecting it. As we're getting started in the first year, my spouse doesn't work. Like, what do I do to help with that anxiety and to protect my new business?
It's a good question. Well, and you said the spouse doesn't work. I could go a few different directions with this. I mean, when you say protect, could mean a lot of different things. I mean, the biggest risk, really, from a protection standpoint, is going to be if your income went away, right? Especially if your spouse doesn't work. So, and even that could mean a lot of things, right? Like the ultimate scenario is you pass away, right? You get in an accident and you pass away. Maybe not as severe as you get in an accident and you're in the hospital, you can't work for a period of time. Depends on your business, sure, right? Like, maybe you have a business that brings in lots of residual income. Maybe your business is landscaping, and if you're in the hospital, all the income goes away. Right. So it does depend on the business, but either way, from a protection standpoint, like where my mind goes is the dreaded insurance word, right? Everyone's sort of hesitant to buy insurance, and a lot of people kind of go with the bare minimum, whether it's on their home or their vehicle. um, I posted on social media recently just about, kind of flipping this on its head or reframing it. Um, the real risk is, your income goes away and your family has no income and you're unable to work and everyone's left scrambling. And then, that's the real risk. You can lose your house or can't put food on the table. So a lot of people are really hesitant to get insurance. They think it's, too expensive. But I think the benefit really outweighs the cost. I don't sell insurance anymore. I was licensed for a decade. Um, it was important to me when I started this business to not work off commissions, and almost all insurance is commission based. I partner with a company who does commission free insurance. So I lean on them. I mean, I'll join the call with whoever I'm working with just to give them sort of an expert, review of it or an opinion. But in this case, I would say the two types to be thinking about are life insurance and disability insurance. So life insurance is obvious. You pass away, you want to have money to take care of your family. There's different ways to kind of calculate this. For a lot of people, it's, hey, I want my spouse and any children to be taken care of until the kids are 18, and I want to pay off the house. And there's different ways that we can kind of calculate that. um, and a lot of different types of insurance. I don't think I'll spend too much time talking about that, like the different types, but I would say one thing that's worth mentioning, if you're going to look into life insurance or disability insurance, if you're part of like a professional organization, a lot of times they will have a group policy. Maybe you're a dentist and you're part of the National Association of Dentists, right? They might have a life insurance group policy that you can buy into, specific to dentists. A lot of times you get preferred rates, and that can be helpful. It can drive the cost down. A lot of times there's no medical checks and things like that below a certain amount. So look into that if you're part of any like professional networks. And then I guess the last thing I'll say, just from a protection standpoint, it's good for business owners to have a succession plan. I have a lot of what are called certified exit planners that I partner with around the country, who have just a wealth of knowledge around succession planning. And really what it is in the event you pass away, um, you don't want all those decisions to fall on your husband's or wife's shoulders. So having that succession plan of, what is the contingency plan? What happens if something happens to me and I can't go to work? So I hope that answers the question, but there's a lot of ways to protect kind of the business.
So I am really nervous about the stock market, especially after SVB. What is a safe investment?
I can only assume. So Silicon Valley Bank collapsed not too long ago. It was a big kind of buzz, in my circles anyway. And a lot of people have been really, really nervous about, is my money safe? Is my cash safe? Do I need to switch banks? Um, I'll say this, like the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank is totally separate from the stock market, has no relation to it. And unless you had over 250,000 in cash at Silicon Valley Bank, you weren't affected at all. So cash in banks are still safe. CDs at banks are still safe. Trying to think of like how I can expand upon this. Like basically the concept, I won't belabor this point, but like FDIC insurance is a federal program that basically secures up to 250,000 of your money at a bank, and that's per bank. So let's say you've got 200,000 at Wells Fargo and 200,000 at Bank of America. Both of those are covered by FDIC insurance. Any bank's going to have FDIC insurance. It should be on your statement. You can double check if it makes you feel better, but that FDIC insurance is really what is securing that money if the bank were to fail. And then you had asked what is a safe investment. It makes me think of a financial planner in my network, Roy Diliberto. He's very well known, and he sort of flips this concept, and he talks about like the real risk is not investing in stocks, and having the money grow over time and keep pace with inflation. Because that's a question we hear a lot too about inflation. Well, hey, inflation's running rampant. What should I do with my money? Well, really at the core of that is everything's costing more. My cash is buying less. And so it really depends on how you define safe. You can leave your money in cash and it's safe. It's not going to go down, but really it is going down. You can buy less with that money now. So I think the real risk is not getting that money put to work. Think about some of the concepts we talked about before. Have enough cash for emergencies, but really what the unsafe thing is to just leave it all in cash. You think it's safe because it's not going down, but especially over a long period of time, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I mean, some of the older people on this call can attest, right? I remember even, when I was a kid, things cost a fraction of what they do now. So if you're sitting on a pile of cash, I wouldn't think about that as safe. The real risk is not investing it over the long term, because that money is just going to buy you less and less over time.
Inflation and interest rates just keep skyrocketing, and there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. How do I protect my money?
Invest. Put money into assets that are going to grow or keep pace with inflation. Maybe a year back, there was all kinds of hubbub about I bonds. I bonds are a federal program, and you're limited. I think it's $10,000 per entity you can put in. So, maybe 10K for you, 10K for your spouse, 10K for your business. It's not a ton of money you can put into I bonds, but those are linked to inflation. And so, they're paying a great rate right now, but 5 years ago, you never would have wanted an I bond. It would have been paying you like 1%, maybe less. And so, it's going to go back to what we talked about before. It's investing in stocks, it's investing in real estate, it's investing in assets that are going to grow over time and keep pace with inflation, or even better, beat inflation. Really, like, I probably sound like a broken record, but like that most at risk investment right now with all of this inflation is cash. And I guess, maybe I should have mentioned this on the last question, but let's say you are investing and that company fails. Right now we're talking doomsday scenarios. Similar to FDIC insurance is SIPC insurance. That is the insurance for investments. And so just make sure you see that on, if you have a brokerage account or an IRA, that should be on your statement as well. Hey, we have SIPC insurance, and that'll cover, I think it's different institution to institution, but I believe it's $500,000 is covered by SIPC. And if you're not sure and you want to double check, they should be able to tell you, I can look at your statement and tell you, but the scenarios, like the questions that we hear about, like, well, what if they go out of business? Typically you're not even at risk then. And a lot of people feel like, well, what if I invest in the S&P 500 and it goes to zero? For that to happen, the 500 largest companies in the United States would also have to go to zero. They'd have to go bankrupt. So we're talking, Walmart goes out of business, Google goes out of business, Facebook goes out of business, right? It's we would have bigger problems to worry about, right? We'd be rationing water. So, it's just so, unlikely, that something like that could happen. I think the more likely scenario is, inflation stays like this for a while and your money keeps buying less. And if you're just sort of sitting on the sidelines, you're going to miss out.
We're almost at time, so I've got time for one more. Is cryptocurrency ever worth it to invest in?
I put crypto in a category with art, collectible coins, right? Like people collect all kinds of, crazy things, beanie babies, right? Crypto is very speculative. I can look at an investment like a stock and it gives me a balance sheet, it gives me a cash flow statement. I can analyze, hey, is this a good investment? Is the company in good financial shape? If you look at Dogecoin, it's based on consumer sentiment. It's based on, are people going to buy this? I'm sure we've all read the stories about, a whole bunch of celebrities endorse XYZ coin. It skyrockets, the celebrities all sell out, and all the average people, who bought into it are left, with nothing. And it's too easy for that to happen, right? There's not enough regulation in cryptocurrency yet. I think in the long term, I can't speculate on it, but I think it's here to stay. Um, as an investment, I would say limit it. If you want to buy crypto, great. We have a lot of clients who do. I'd say limit it to 5%. If you want to get really crazy, maybe you could go up to 10%, but for 99.9% of people, I'd say 5% or less of the money that you have to invest. You could gamble it, in crypto. For every person you see who is a multimillionaire from crypto, there's 10 others, who lost half their money or more. So be ultra cautious. It's one of the most speculative things because it's not really based on, anything right now besides, are people willing to buy it?
Yeah, that makes total sense. All right. Well, we are at our time for today. Thank you so much, Josh, for answering all of these questions. If there are more questions, please reach out to us. Hello at Wealth and Yourself is one way, as well as on any of our socials. If you want to send a DM, if you want to send an email, if you want to send a pigeon, whatever you want to do, ask questions. We love to answer those. And this session will be posted on YouTube. If you want to go back or share it with others, or review one of the answers that was your question, and feel free to leave more comments on that video. So I'll hand back to you, Josh.
Thank you. I hope I get a pigeon. That would be amazing. Cool. Well, yes, thank you everyone for coming. This has been really great. Hopefully I answered all your questions. Definitely reach out if you have more. And probably next month we'll host another one of these. So if this was helpful, tell a friend, come next time. And thanks for coming. Hope you guys all have a great weekend.